Welcome to DOScember, and what better way to celebrate the occasion than playing around with a NeXTstation. Wait, what? NeXTstation's not usually associated with DOS applications since they're running a Unix-like operating system. But that's what we have SoftPC for. So in this episode, we'll be installing a totally legit version of SoftPC. I'll show you the process of how this works, totally unscripted, and then we'll see what it can do and how it performs. So stay tuned. In order to start the installation, I'll just pop the CD into this external SCSI drive. I'm using an Apple one right now since my Next branded CD-ROM, which is almost identical, is still undergoing repairs, and I'll walk you through the installation. I do apologize for the flickering. I'm shooting this with my phone's camera, so the quality is probably not the best, but I hope you can still see what's going on. Now we have the CD showing up here, and it contains an image that I got off of, I believe it was Macintosh Garden, and just burnt it onto an empty CD. There are 3 files, so let's start with the README file and see what's going on here. SoftPC Professional and SoftPC with Windows, README information. I don't necessarily know what the difference is, so let's just close this out and maybe start with the Windows package, since that seems to make the impression that it does in fact come with an operating system like DOS and then the Windows shell installed on top of that. Alright, installation has finished, so let's try and get this started. And once I've entered the license information, I'll be right back. We've entered the serial numbers. Now it's time to create a virtual hard drive to run DOS and Windows off of. We'll put that into a directory that I've created specifically for SoftPC to keep them separate. Now I don't exactly know what the difference is between DOS and Windows disk. Since it's suggested to run Windows, we'll pick that and then simply adjust the disk size. I don't think Windows is going to be happy with 3 megabytes, so we'll use 200 megabytes and off we go. It looks as if the default DOS version is 5.0 and the installed version of Microsoft Windows is 3.1. So as a next step, we'll try and upgrade the version of MS-DOS that we have running on this machine. And we're back trying to upgrade the version of MS-DOS. This time I found a copy of the update images, and I put the first one on a floppy disk that I think might work, and it booted just fine into the setup program. So let's continue this and see if we're getting this done correctly. Okay, so it looks like this one doesn't want to be booted from the floppy disk, but rather have the setup called once we boot it into the actual MS-DOS 5 version. There is no consistency with the user experience on these things. Good old days. Haha. So let's boot back into version 5 and run setup from there. Okay, we'll put that back in, and oh, I hate this mouse. Attach floppy A. And try and launch. Doesn't want to. Let's try this again. Probably the wrong syntax. Okay, to set up MS-DOS now press enter. That's exactly what we want to do. Need to provide and label 1 or 2 floppy disks, can be unformatted, blah blah blah. I'm hoping we can skip this. MS-DOS VGA settings are correct. Now off we go. The following programs can be installed on your computer. Backup, program, Windows only. Sure, why not? And Windows is in this directory indeed. So we got a few minor files, not really important, like print.exe. That didn't work, but installation seems to have finished. So we'll detach the floppy drive just to be on the safe side. We'll also, sorry, floppy disk, not the drive, of course. And restart the system and see if everything works. And we are running 6.22, and hopefully Windows also still works. Seems to be the case. So, successfully upgraded the DOS version. Now let's see if we can try and get some games going on here. Let's try and find out what characteristics this virtual machine has in terms of memory, processor, etc. So I've downloaded an image for a version of Checkit, which is a classic DOS tool to inspect these kind of legacy XT80 machines. Put it on a floppy disk that's mounted and can read all of the contents. So let's try to install that and see if we can get that up and running to find out a little bit more about what makes this thing tick. Alright, let's try and run this and see what we're dealing with here. Hoping this is the correct way to start it, and there we go. Ooh, that is some slow rendering. So I'm assuming it's maybe an 8086, 8088 processor this is emulating. But we'll find out in a moment. Alright, here we go. It seems to think it's running in 286 at 100 megahertz, which I pretty much doubt. These rarely got above 20 megahertz. More likely that they've been running at an under 10 or around 10 megahertz, 8, 10 or 12 and a half. Definitely not 100 megahertz, but that seems to be the processor, 286, so that will tell me what kind of games I can potentially run. Not that they're going to run any fast. You've seen how slow this is rendering, so let's try and get out of this and then try and play some games and see how that goes. Actually, let's try and run some performance tests and see what this thing says. It's currently running the benchmarks. You already see, in case it's finished doing the CPU performance, but the XT is about 300 in whatever that measurement is, and this is maybe 1900 CPU units, so quite a bit faster it seems. Here are the numbers: 353 versus 1841. Whatever that means. So seems to be much faster than an XT. One of the last tests we're going to perform is running a game that I usually can play on my IBM AT286 pretty well, Prince of Persia. And this claims to emulate a 286 as well, so we'll see how this will run. Obviously there's no color, so we'll have to do with grayscale, and there is no kind of proper sound other than PC speaker sound that this emulates, so we'll see how that turns out as well. I did mount a directory on my regular drive as an FSA drive. I believe that stands for File Sharing Architecture. And I've dropped them in here. And this is, if you could see that, mounted as my E drive. So it has the files here. Let's see how that works. That is taking its sweet time, and you can see it's starting to render the outlines of that window. There is no sound coming out yet, so this is abysmally slow. This is a regular NeXTstation. This is not the turbo version, so I have no idea how this might run under the turbo version, if that's any faster. But at this point, I fail to see the practical usability of SoftPC on this platform unless you have a super powerful processor in it. It's still trying to render the main screen. So this seems to be, for all intents and purposes, performing more like an XT rather than an 8086 or 8088 processor rather than a 286. And I don't know if you can hear that, but it seems to be trying to play the soundtrack, and this is totally overwhelming the system. It's beach balling. So I don't think we'll be able to play any reasonable games with this, or whoop. One thing we can try to do is change how many grays it's supposed to display. I had it set to 256 in VGA, but what happens if we set it to CGA and 4 gray tones? And it's restarting. And we're now trying to relaunch the game, see if that makes any difference, and it does load a little bit faster. Sound is still somewhat choppy, so it is not performing as it should be. Yeah, I don't think this is fast enough for any fun gameplay. Let's try some of the Windows native games, and I always like a good game of solitaire sometimes to waste away my time. And it is somewhat hard to figure out the colors, so if you're not familiar with the cards, you might have trouble using this on a black and white screen or grayscale screen. But this performs somewhat decently. Other applications, and this is just the basic Windows write, there is a significant lag in keyboard input versus characters showing up on the screen. So in conclusion, what the system test here seems to be claiming that it outperforms, the virtual machine outperforms a NEC or IBM XT. I cannot reproduce with some of the simple tests that I did. Key presses lagging behind quite a bit. Windows being somewhat sluggish, and then a simple game which is excruciatingly slow and completely unplayable. So I don't really know what applications and use cases SoftPC for the NeXTstation or NeXTSTEP operating system has. If you have any more information, please leave them down in the comments. If you have any good descriptions of real-world examples. But yeah, I hope you had fun in our little exploration of SoftPC and running some DOS and Windows applications on a black and white NeXTstation. Happy DOScember, and thank you for watching. It is DOScember, and what better way to play around with something than using a NeXTstation? Wait, what? That's not really something that usually is associated with DOS applications, but as of course blah, blah, blah,